My mission on the next video is the complete bore drill. That's going out into the woods, selecting some deadfall and making a new bore drill set. Well, this country has been ravaged by storms over the last 2 weeks. We've had Storm Cara, Storm Dennis, now we've got another storm on the way. So if the wind's going to pick up to what it's scheduled to pick up to, it might be a bit dangerous going into the wood, because I know there are some big trees come down over the past 2 storms. So we'll just see how it pans out anyway. Ideally what I'm after for my bow drill set is some willow or some poplar. But this wind's picking up and one of those can come down. We might actually come back in the morning, but I'll just skirt around the outside of this wood. Right, well, I'm back out in the wood, and the chances of catching a falling tree have subsided somewhat. As you can see, there has been some activity. This tree here has come from here, so I'm going to try and stabilise that, but I should be able to find some willow or poplar, so we'll get that sorted. As you can see, there's been another fallen limb in the background there, quite a few actually. So I'm gonna, well, this one's safe enough as it is. It's hung up there, and it is, in fact, it's dead silver birch, so I might be able to make some use of that. Right, so what we've got here then is some dead willow, and you can tell it's dead because there's fungus growing on it. See that? The bracket fungus there, whole lot, and we can snap the twigs. Remember, it's all soaking wet, so it still does this. It still snaps though. So we're going to take a section of this, straight section, which we can par down for the bow, for the drill. Sorry, we can get the drill out of a section here, par that down with a knife, and we don't need great thickness for the, goes down there. Look, we don't need great thickness for the hearth. We'll get the hearth out of this as well. We'll not get the bow out of this, and we'll certainly not get the bearing block out of this. We'll look for some other woods for the bow, perhaps hazel, and if we could get a bit of old dead blackthorn or hawthorn for the bearing, that would be good. Right, so I've got these two sticks, both look as though they could be hazel. Both have been chopped down by somebody, so I'm not taking live wood. And I'll take what we've got back to base camp now, because we're both getting soaked. Right, well, I've been out and I've collected the materials to make my bow drill set. I've got some willow here. I've actually made a start on this, but no matter. And this is dead willow, fairly dry, seasoned. And the willow will do to make the spindle, or the drill, and the hearth board. So hoping I'll get those two out of that, and these two will be surplus. Let's put these out the way for the minute. Then I've got some hardwood, also dead, but in this case this could have been alive, but I'm not about chopping live trees down, so I'll use this. I think it's blackthorn, so that's a very hard wood to use as the bearing, and I only need a small piece of that. And then just to complete the wood side of it anyway, I've got a stick which also was dead because I didn't want to chop off a live hazel tree. This is hazel, and I'm hoping I'll get the bow out of maybe just this end section here, which, if I just take this section here, it's not as long as I would like it, but it should do. So I've made a start on the spindle. And I just want to pare that down a bit, get it, I don't know, about an inch in diameter, maybe it's a little bit less. So I'm taking the bark off that and I'll just straighten it up. It's easily long enough. My estimate for long enough is the span of my end of my thumb to the end of my little finger. So I'm just going to pare this down, and I'll get back to you when I've got it to the required diameter, fairly straight, and then we'll come back to the ends. Okay, so we're getting there. It's still perhaps at this stage a little bit thick, but I'm going to go ahead and put the ends on it. Now there's two ends. One will go into the hearth board and the top end will sit in the bearing block. The bottom that goes in the hearth board wants to be blunt and stubby, and to provide maximum friction and get a lot of material off. And the top that goes in the bearing block wants to be sharp for minimum friction. So I'll just start with any end, and we'll make this the top end. So this wants to be the sharp end, minimum friction. Now at this stage, this doesn't have to be finished off to any degree of perfection. That's close enough for this stage. So that's the spindle almost finished. Stubby section that will go down, pointy section that'll go in the bearing block that'll point up. So we'll leave that, and now we'll go on to the hearth board. And what I need for the hearth board is a flat section of willow, which will be about just over ½ an inch thick. So we're just going to split it, this, off centre. We've got a lot of it, so it doesn't have to be perfect, and it's not splitting terribly well. Get your nostrils out of it. Get your nostrils out of it. In fact, I may have to make a wedge. No, what you want is a flat section, a flat piece. So you want it fairly flat. That side's fairly flat. This side needs a bit of work on it. Don't chop too high up. You really don't want to take your thumb off. Right then. So I'm going to half this board, and I'm going to just use half of it. And I'm going to use this half here, so we'll just saw it in half. This saw has seen better days. What you doing? Hey, get down. While the sun's out, I'll leave that in the sun because it's not entirely dry. Right, which one are we going with? Okay, we've made fairly hard work of that, but that's the starting of the half board, and we'll get a good few burns in that. We'll put that in the sun, and now we'll think about the bearing block. And the bearing block doesn't have to be wood. It could be a piece of bone, it could be a piece of stone, it could be a shell. It's something to hold in your hand and stabilise the top of the spindle, and for this sharp pointy bit of the spindle to latch into it. Something low friction it can spin on, but something that will stop it from shooting off. So what I've got is a piece of this hardwood here, which is possibly blackthorn. And I'm just going to cut a piece out of it and cut it in half. So it's going to take a while with my Laplander, so I'll get back to you when I've sewn this. I want to take this section off as well. Right, I only want half of that to hold in my hand, so I'll just split that. Right, so with a divot in there, that'll do as the top bearing block. Right, so with a bit of adjustment that's going to fit in there, and then that's going to be your half board there, and then with your bow this will spin hopefully fairly straight, hopefully it'll stay in place. So obviously there's a bit more work to do yet on all three of these, in fact quite a bit of work yet, but we've got the basis of them. So now we're going to go on to the bow. Now ideally the bow should be fingertip to armpit, somewhere like that. I certainly haven't got that. You see, you only want it bent in one plane, and this is wobbly all over the place. So right, so this in itself is about the right length, but I've got a bit of a handle there, and then the string will only go from here up to about that notch there. Right, so now we're going to finish off the bow drill. We've got the stick, but we need some string, and if you had to build this from scratch out in the wilderness, that would be a serious sticking point, getting some string strong enough. I have seen it done though, where people have taken the hem, the bottom hem off their t-shirt, twisted it up to make some string and used it effectively. But hopefully you would have some cordage with you. And I've got some cordage here. The one piece that might be long enough might not stand up to the job. The piece best suited for the job is probably not long enough. So I might have to join a couple of bits together, but I don't want the knot running round the spindle. It's not going to help things. That'll hold it on the end. In fact, we've got enough. I've got enough there with that one piece of string, so we're alright. See how it works, can't you? If you're doing this for the first time, don't expect to succeed, and then you won't be disappointed and put off, because there are lots of things you've got to learn if you've never made a board drill before, and that's using a knife, your muscles and your eyes to shape the wood in the form that you want it. And there's all the mistakes to learn. It's not something to do for the first time if you're not used to using a knife. And you don't know what to do when you cut yourself. Because we've all at some stage cut ourselves quite badly at some stage. Now that'll sit in there. Now I can shake that and that'll sit in there. So I'm happy with that. So that's one end sorted. So now let's have a look at the other end. And initially, does that fit? That doesn't fit entirely. That doesn't sit entirely flat, but perhaps flat enough. So I'm just going to pick a point. I don't want to break out too close to the edge. I want the diameter of the spindle to stay fully on the board, but be fairly close to the edge, but not too close. So I'm just going to mark where I think the centre is, and now I'm just going to do another divot. This divot's obviously got to be a bit bigger because it's a big stubby point that goes in the end there. I mentioned the difficulty of the cordage if you didn't have any, but of course you do at least need a decent knife. The very minimum, you need a knife, and ideally you need a knife and a saw, and really ideally you need a small hatchet as well, one that could be sharpened a bit better than this one. You're going to get your nostrils knocked if you don't get out the way. Come on, out the way. Come out of there. Right, we're just burning in, so it's nice and slow. Hey, come out the way. Nice and even, nice and slow. Keep getting smoke from the top bearing, but not the bottom. We won't worry about that too much. We're not getting much effect at all on the bottom. Maybe this wood is just too damp. Right, so we'll cut the notch in here. So the notch is to give the coals somewhere to form and also to let a little air to the coals. And it's just a V cut from the side into the centre, or almost to the centre of the divot. We can cut it roughly with the saw and then finish it off with the knife. Just be careful, of course, that you don't run over your finger like I did. It's going to happen, isn't it? It's going to happen. Alright, we're nearly there with this saw. You maybe see how I've made it slightly wider at the bottom than at the top, and it's going to just short of the centre there, and I'll just pop that out with my knife so that comes out, and then I can just tidy it up a little bit. Give it a bit of flaring at the bottom there. This is the underside, just so as the oxygen can get in. Will you get down? Hey, you're pinching that. Get off it. Get out of it. Get out of it. You get your whiskers chopped off. So, hopefully then, when the coals are formed in here, they're going to drop down into that groove. So there are two more components we need, and one of them is something to collect those embers on, and the other one is a bird's nest, because at the end of the day we don't get a flame, we just get an ember. So that ember has to be transferred to a bird's nest and coaxed into a flame. So that's what we're going to need. The bark or paper or a bit of leather maybe to move that coal from where it's formed in the bottom of that V into our bird's nest, and we're going to need our bird's nest as well. So I'll just get some bird nest material and a bit of bark. Right, that's a little bit slack, but we'll give it a go. Right, lock in, and now it's a little bit slack. That's a bit tight, but Right, that's it. Okay, we're looking good at the moment. We don't want to have to do it again, so give it some welly. Can't keep it up, gonna have to stop. Right, now that's a good ember. That is a good ember, but there's a bit too much wind. And that's what I'm worried of, the wind. So we'll bring you can let this sit for a while, let it coalesce for a while. But I don't want the wind breaking it up. Right. I'm covering it with my hand because I just don't want the wind breaking it up. And then we put it in there. Putting it in, I broke it up a little, but don't be too urgent with it. There's plenty of fuel there. Okay, so there we are. And now you've got to keep that going, transfer it to your fire pit. So then, that is the bore drill. It's not easy when you set out to demonstrate the bore drill, so it's certainly not going to be easy if you're in a situation where you had to use had to make a bore drill. That's not really going to catch because the wood in there is sodden. But that, lighting a fire was not the aim of the exercise, just getting fire from a bore drill. That was the aim of the exercise. So just to recap then, the components of the bore drill and what we made were, well, in order that we at least started them, were the spindle or drill, shaped with its blunt working end and its sharp bearing end, the hearth where we put in the divot shaped a V, and we used that to make and collect the embers, the bearing block which helped us maintain control on the spindle and provided a low friction bearing at the top because we lubricated it with a leaf and spit. We had the bow with the string to put the rotation onto the spindle, and then we needed something to catch the embers on. A piece of bark is ideal, and then we needed a bird's nest to transfer the ember to start the fire, because after all this work you don't get a flame, all you get's an ember. The tools we used was, you could possibly do it all with just a knife. It would take you much longer. A knife, and I would say a saw, a minimum, but obviously an axe can do a lot of work a lot quicker when you're shaping down the hearth board, and in some instances it can help you take branches off, but in chopping, in cutting through wood, a saw is always quicker than an axe. So that's it then. It was, I mean, I've done it, I wouldn't say a lot of times, but I've done it quite a few times. So I knew what woods I was looking for, and as it turned out, I started off on perhaps the wrong side of this willow. The whiter, softer portion of it was better. Poplar works equally as well, and I found the best I've ever used is ivy, if you can get ivy thick enough. The wood for the bow doesn't make any difference, so long as it's sturdy. It could have done with being a little bit longer than this. A little bit of a curve in it is very helpful, although you only want it to curve on the one plane, not all crookedy kinky curving on two planes. That makes things awkward. The wood for the bearing block, that just needs to be a hard wood, and if it's not hard, then green would be better than seasoned. As you can see, you get a lot of burning in the bearing block itself, and some people will use shells or stones for the bearing, because that'll give you less friction, and the less friction you get at the bearing, the more power you can put into the hearth. So that's gonna help you. It would help as well if this was just put beeswax on this. It'll help it. It'll reduce the wear on it, and it'll also, to a small degree, help the grip on the spindle. Sometimes what I do is I put a slight chamfer on the centre of the spindle, and that just holds this holds the string in more or less the same place. If you're doing this for the first time, don't worry about starting getting an ember for the first time. Just worry about the coordination, because the coordination, if you're not used to working with hand tools, can be difficult. And as you saw from my episode there, getting this string at the right tension can be fairly difficult as well. Some adjustment there is handy, but you know, usually I drill a hole in here, but with an awl. But you know, how long do you want to spend? What this does demonstrate is that if you're taking your tools out into the woods with you and you think you're going to need a fire, by all means practice with the bow drill. But if you're really going to need a fire, have some secondary and tertiary means of doing it, because the weather might not play. If it's wet, it's very difficult. You get this wet, you're just not going to get the ember material. Anyway, try it. I reckon you can call yourself a bushcrafter if you can make a bow drill from what you go out and harvest, and you can start a fire from it. I reckon you can call yourself a bushcrafter. Well, maybe it's one of the steps. So anyway, I enjoyed doing it, and hopefully you'll not just enjoy watching it, but you'll get some satisfaction if you can actually do it. So I'll leave it there then. I'll catch you in a week or so. Keep safe and carry on.